It is now my pleasure to welcome Molly Catherine Chisholm, selected as the Class of 2017 Senior Speaker.
Good morning, everyone. To the Class of 2017, congratulations, we made it. To our families and friends, thank you for supporting us everywhere, from our athletic endeavors to our artistic expressions and our academic journey. We couldn't have done it without your endless support. And to the Bates community, thank you to the staff members. From the cheerful smiles in the egg line to the fist bumps in P-Gill, you made each day a pleasure. And thank you to the students, to the lifelong friends we made, or the one-minute conversations we had at the printers. You added color to our lives. And finally, to our professors. You sparked interest and inspired us to see more than meets the eye. Thank you for helping shape the people we have become today. And finally, thank you all so much for giving me the honor of speaking here today. I cannot imagine a group of people I would rather be with. Everyone talks about us, the millennials, in an often pejorative way. How we are entitled, glued to our phones, or out of touch with reality, rather than on the potential impact we could have in the world. But a few years ago, I heard someone use the phrase, the love generation, and I was struck by the bold beauty of such simple words. The love generation, an age of human beings willing to set aside their differences, ready to fill the world with acceptance rather than fear, with love rather than hate. I was captivated by the idea. It seemed spirited in a way that I had always wanted to be, and promised a bright future for our generation. While there is, and always has been, some evidence of the existence of the love generation around us, the recent tumultuous political landscape and increased access to technology has made it impossible to escape the 24-hour newscasts that seem to only report acts of violence and hate that occur every day. As much as a younger me wanted to believe that our generation was a coming wave of hope, I was hesitant to accept this wholly optimistic view of humanity. Although I was skeptical, the phrase remained lodged in the back of my brain. Even though I grew up around people who always believed in making the world a better place, it wasn't until I arrived at Bates that I understood what that truly meant and how it could actually happen. I want to share two stories with you today. Two teaching moments I've had over the last 4 years here that have shown me what it means to be a part of this community. Two moments of hundreds that have moved me from skeptical to certain that the love generation lives on in us. First, I want to take you back to my very first day of freshman year at our ASOP trip orientation. Shortly after finding a seat with my 3 new roommates, I noticed one boy bullying another boy, taunting him and telling him he couldn't sit with them. I remember feeling betrayed, as this did not match the welcoming and kind Bates I had been picturing in my head for so long. So I made the decision to move over and sit with the bullied kid. I sat down, told him my name, and rather aggressively told him the other kid was a jerk. I remember he had on a bucket hat and glasses, but that he didn't look up from his feet much while we talked. He quietly introduced himself and expressed some of the doubts he was now having about starting school here. In a desperate act to cheer him up, I told him pretty much every good thing I could think about Bates. I spewed facts about the good desserts and commons, about short term, about the close friends we would make in the coming days, months, and years. Once he seemed in better spirits, I returned to my roommates, feeling both sad for the rough start this kid had had, but also happy that I had been able to help him a little. A few minutes later, all of the ASOP coordinators ran out from different hiding places and started having a water balloon fight around us. In the midst of all the chaos, I saw my sad new friend jump up, rip off his hat, and run down to join his fellow leaders. But before he got all the way to them, he turned around and bounded back up the steps to me. Smiling, he told me he was in fact an ASOP leader, and that pretending to be a new student is a prank they play every year. He gave me a hug, told me I'd fit in well at Bates, and ran back to stand with his new friends. I was shocked. Despite the reassurance from my roommates, I couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Every time I saw him in Commons, He would wave, and I would be overcome by the memories of all the things I, a first year, had taught him, a senior, about Bates. A few months later, I started to see the silver lining in what was still a cringeworthy story. It became obvious from that interaction that Bates was a place where kindness was expected, a place where, even as a brand new member of the community, I was surprised to see someone being so openly mean. In hindsight, I realized that this is a truth that cannot be applied to every space of higher education, let alone many other institutions in our country and in our world. My second story comes 3 years later in my time at Bates, in my senior fall. As some of you know, I participated in a mock presidential campaign for a rhetoric seminar where I ran as the Republican candidate. You guys are awesome. Although I do not identify as a Republican myself, I chose to take on this role to challenge myself and to see if I could continue to exercise my rhetorical skills, and challenge myself to gain a more robust understanding of the issues. Throughout the mock campaign, I participated in public debates and gave speeches where I aggressively argued conservative points of view that countered and even offended some members of the Bates community. At times, I was approached by my peers and told off for some of the things I had said while playing this role. Even though it was all an act, I still often felt like an outsider among the vocal Democrats at our college and couldn't help but take their attacks somewhat personally. But having the opportunity to step into this role opened my eyes to the way Bates has taught us to handle our differences. At the end of the semester, I was talking with the professor of the seminar, Professor Kelly Romano, about the mock election, and she told me she was surprised I had taken the role given the way I was in a first-year class of hers. She remembered me as shy and only speaking up when I was positive I had the right answer. Although my family would argue I have rarely stopped talking in my entire life, I reckon she was right. My first-year self would not have accepted the uncertainty and vulnerability that came with the role. After our conversation, I realized two things about my education here. One, the Bates community is founded on trust and acceptance. I had faith that even if I were representing the political views held by the minority of students at Bates, I would be treated with the same respect afforded to my Democratic counterpart, whose platform was more in line with the majority. Two, I realized I could accept this role because, over 3 years, the loving nature of the Bates community had shown me that this was a place where I could take risks, a place where I could embarrass myself and still be accepted. This past election was polarizing and divisive, no matter who you voted for. It was and is difficult for me to understand why there is support for some people, policies, and beliefs. And it is more than understandable that these differences are not always met with kind words and acceptance. But this fall, I saw a glimmer of hope in our mock election. Instead of choosing to shut me down, people often ask me to explain my ideas and reasoning. While these conversations have rarely changed minds, they exhibited the respect and intellectually courageous mindset that is inherent in Bates students. Although this mock election occurred in a microcosm that is difficult, if not impossible, to replicate in another circumstance, it reaffirmed my belief that Bates has given us the tools to enact these learned principles, and that the world has something to learn from our small college. These two snapshots are unique to my time at Bates, but the sentiments are reflected thousands of times over in the stories of our class and of the classes that graduated before us. We are taken into Bates and taught how to write well, how to solve complicated equations, and how to argue our perspective. But we are also taught how to open our eyes, open our minds, and open our hearts to the world around us. As Bates students, we've had the opportunity to live in a world where respect and kindness are not just something we strive for, but they are the pillars of our community. We graduate today with more than just the knowledge we need to succeed in our future endeavors, but with the power to truly make the world a better place. The love generation. When I look out at you all, I'm sure now, more than ever, that it exists. It may not be every person who falls under the millennial banner, but it is us. In the Bates mission statement, it says that we'll engage the transformative power of our differences. Tomorrow, when we are no longer enrolled as students at Bates College, we'll have the opportunity to engage with countless new people and to spread the accepting environment we have been so lucky to flourish in for the last 4 years out into the world. But we won't just spread this love to all the places that we go. We will teach this love to all the people that we meet. We will have the chance to show the world a love that is grounded in courageous action and critical thinking, and to honor differences rather than attempting to erase them, just as we have for the last 4 years. So be bold and work every day to create an environment that models our world here in Lewiston. I have no doubt that each of us will carry Bates with them on the different paths they take, always showing those around us the enormous impact that love can have. Thank you again, and congratulations.